Welcome back, my dear friends. Imagine grabbing a handful of change from your pocket, dumping it on the table, and seeing a penny that looks like every other penny you've ever seen. But what if I told you that this unremarkable little coin, dated 1969, could be worth far more than 1 cent? What if that penny, the humble Liberty 1 cent 1969 Lincoln penny from the United States, could be worth hundreds, thousands, or even more because of how it was made, the tiny mistakes that occurred during minting, and the unusual varieties that slipped into circulation? What if the difference between a coin that's worth its face value and one that is prized by collectors around the world is so subtle that most people overlook it? Tonight, we are going to take you deep into the fascinating world of one of America's most collected coins, the Lincoln penny from 1969, and explain exactly why some examples of this everyday coin can be incredibly valuable and extremely rare. We're going to explore its history, what makes certain specimens so desirable, the errors and mint mark irregularities that can make a penny worth far more than 1 cent, and how the market values these coins today. The Lincoln cent has a long and storied history in American coinage, dating back to 1909 when it was first introduced to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Before that year, no U.S. coin had featured a president, and the decision to place Lincoln's portrait on the cent was a major departure from past designs. Victor David Brenner's depiction of Lincoln was chosen in part because of its widespread recognition and emotional resonance with the American public. The design quickly became popular, and the Lincoln penny became the smallest denomination coin in everyday circulation. For decades, the penny was struck in a bronze alloy, consisting mostly of copper, and featured Lincoln on the obverse and a pair of wheat ears on the reverse through 1958-in 1959, to commemorate Lincoln's 150th birthday. The Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparro, replaced the wheat ears on the reverse of the cent. This design would remain in place through 2008, and the 1969 Lincoln penny therefore features the familiar Lincoln Memorial on the back. The design was widely recognized and remained unchanged for decades, becoming one of the most familiar coins in American currency. By 1969, the United States was deep into the 20th century, and pennies were produced in enormous quantities to supply the everyday needs of commerce. Millions upon millions of Lincoln cents were struck each year at various mint facilities, including the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint, the latter of which used a small D mint mark just below the date on the obverse. The purpose of producing such a vast number of coins was simple: to meet the demands of daily transactions. Pennies were used to make exact change, to pay for small items, and to complete cash transactions. Because the face value of the penny is so small, most people did not pay much attention to them. They were everyday objects, so common that they were seldom noticed. Most 1969 Lincoln pennies that exist today are ordinary circulating coins and are worth only a fraction more than their face value, or exactly 1 cent. These are the coins that you might still find in jars of old coins, in drawers, under couch cushions, or mixed in with rolls of change from the bank. To the untrained eye, these coins all look the same: a coppery disc, 1 inch in diameter, with Lincoln's profile on one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. But for collectors and numismatists who study coins in detail, subtle differences matter tremendously. Tiny variations in the strike, minute differences in the mint mark, errors that occurred during production, and rare die varieties can have a dramatic impact on a coin's desirability and market value. To understand why a 1969 Lincoln penny might be worth more than its face value, we need to understand how coins are made and how errors can occur. Coins begin as blank metal discs called planchets. These planchets are cut from large sheets of metal alloy and then processed to ensure they are the correct thickness and diameter. Once ready, planchets are fed into a coin press where two dies, one bearing the obverse design and one bearing the reverse design, strike the planchet with tremendous force, impressing the designs into both sides of the metal at the same time. Under ideal circumstances, each coin comes off the press with crisp designs, clear lettering, and exactly the intended appearance. In reality, the minting process involves many moving parts. The dies can wear down, adjustments can be made, planchets can be misaligned, foreign material can interfere, and minute mistakes can occur. Some of these mistakes are caught and corrected before large numbers of coins are produced, but others slip through quality control and end up in circulation. These mistakes can create error coins or varieties that differ in noticeable ways from the common examples. In the case of the 1969 Lincoln penny, one of the most dramatic and well-known varieties is the doubled die obverse error. This error occurs during the creation of the die itself, before any coins are struck. When the master hub that carries the design is impressed into the blank die, it may be struck more than once to fully transfer the design. If these impressions are misaligned slightly from one another, the result is a doubled design on the die. Coins struck from that die will then show doubling of letters, numbers, or design elements. In the case of the 1969 Lincoln penny, a prominent double die obverse error can cause the lettering in the words United States of America, E pluribus unum, and In God we trust to appear doubled or shadowed. Even Lincoln's profile can sometimes show doubled features. The 1969 double die obverse Lincoln penny is one of the most celebrated varieties among U.S. error coins and is highly sought after by collectors. This is not a subtle variation that you might miss without magnification. The doubling on a true double die obverse 1969 penny is often bold and unmistakable. Because this variety is rare relative to the total number of 1969 Lincoln pennies struck, and because collectors prize it for its dramatic appearance and historical significance, examples in high grades, especially uncirculated condition, can fetch significant prices in the collector market. Another type of error that can elevate the value of a 1969 penny is an off-center strike. This occurs when the planchet is not correctly aligned before the dies strike. If the planchet is shifted slightly to one side, part of the design may not be impressed, leaving an off-center appearance with a blank area where the design should be. The degree of off-center determines the rarity and value. A coin that is only slightly off-center is less exciting and generally less valuable than one that is dramatically off-center with a large portion of the design missing. Off-center coins are fascinating because they visually demonstrate that something went wrong in the minting process, and certain off-center 1969 pennies have sold for substantial amounts in auctions and private transactions. Planchet errors are another category that can increase a coin's value. These involve mistakes in the preparation of the blank metal discs before they are struck. A planchet might be incorrectly alloyed, irregularly shaped, or have lamination issues where the metal layers separate. In extreme cases, a planchet could even be missing its copper plating if it was struck before plating was completed. These kinds of planchet errors are rare in Lincoln pennies and can be very valuable to collectors, especially when the error is dramatic and easily visible. Die cracks and die breaks also create collectible varieties. As dies wear out over time, they can crack under the stress of repeated strikes. These cracks appear on the coins as raised lines or irregularities where metal has flowed into the fracture in the die. Certain 1969 penny die crack varieties have been documented and collected, and grouping coins by specific die cracks allows numismatists to study how the minting process evolved over time. Repunched mint marks are another fascinating variety. In earlier decades, mint marks were often punched into the die by hand, and occasionally an engraver would punch the mark more than once, slightly misaligned. This resulted in coins that show evidence of this repunching as doubled or shadowed mint marks. While by 1969 mint mark application was more controlled, some varieties still exist where the D mint mark from the Denver Mint shows subtle evidence of repunching. These varieties are cataloged in specialized reference guides and can carry premiums over standard coins. All of these errors and varieties, double dies, off-center strikes, planchet errors, die cracks, repunched mint marks, are what makes certain 1969 Lincoln pennies noteworthy to collectors. What would otherwise be a common coin worth 1 cent can become a collectible piece of history worth far more, simply because of a tiny deviation that occurred during production. Of course, condition matters enormously. A heavily worn coin that has spent decades in circulation, with the details rubbed smooth from use, is generally worth only a small premium at best, even if it is a recognized variety. Collectors use grading scales to assess the condition of a coin, ranging from poor and about good for very worn examples, through fine and extremely fine for coins with moderate wear, up to mint state for uncirculated coins with full original detail and luster. A 1969 double die obverse penny in mint condition is far more valuable than one that has been worn down by decades of use. Exceptional coins that have been preserved in pristine condition can command the highest prices because they are rarer and more visually appealing to advanced collectors. The market value of 1969 Lincoln pennies varies widely depending on what you have. A typical circulated coin worth only face value might still be interesting to someone completing a date and mint mark set, but it will generally trade for a cent to a few dollars at best. Uncirculated examples without notable errors can be worth more, sometimes in the tens of dollars range depending on the exact grade and eye appeal. But when you encounter a true error coin like the double die obverse, the values grow dramatically. Certified and graded examples of this variety in high grades have been known to sell for hundreds to thousands of dollars in auctions and dealer sales. Other error types such as dramatic off-center strikes can sell for hundreds or even more. especially if the degree of off-centering is significant and the date and design elements remain attractive. Collectors also appreciate provenance and certification. Coins that have been authenticated and graded by reputable third-party grading services carry assigned grades that help buyers and sellers determine fair market value. These services evaluate coins for authenticity, condition, and error type, and encapsulate them in protective holders with assigned numbers and grades that indicate their condition. A certified 1969 double-die obverse Lincoln penny graded MS65 or higher can bring a premium because buyers know exactly what they are getting and trust the grading standard. Throughout the years, certain 1969 penny varieties have become legends among collectors. Some error coins appear in only small numbers and are subject to intense competition among advanced collectors. Others turn up more frequently in circulation or coin roll hunting, prompting ongoing study, discussion, and debate about their status and value. Coin collectors often reference specialized guides and online databases to identify and compare varieties, and rare examples are documented in numismatic literature. The story of the 1969 Lincoln penny is also part of a larger narrative about American coinage and how everyday objects can hold hidden surprises. Most people use pennies without thinking twice, spending them, saving them, or tossing them into jars without realizing that a small fraction of them might be valuable. The difference between a penny that's worth 1 cent and one that's worth hundreds or thousands lies in those tiny imperfections, the mistakes and irregularities that occurred in an otherwise highly controlled manufacturing process. In circulation today, ordinary 1969 Lincoln cents remain common. They are still being spent by cash customers, pulled from circulation by banks and retailers, and collected by people who want to complete basic sets. Some are sold in inexpensive coin sets, others are stored in albums by hobbyists, and many remain unnoticed in jars and drawers. But among them, the rare errors and varieties are treasured by collectors who seek out the unusual, the curious, and the rare. If you find a 1969 Lincoln penny that looks a little different, perhaps letters that seem doubled, a mint mark that seems off, or design elements that appear strange, it is worth taking a closer look. These coins tell the story not only of Lincoln and American history, but also of the minting process itself and the tiny anomalies that can turn pocket change into captivating treasures. The thrill of discovering a valuable coin where others see only common change is one of the joys of numismatics, and the 1969 Lincoln penny stands as a perfect example of how even the smallest pieces of metal can carry big surprises. A century after its introduction, the Lincoln cent continues to fascinate collectors and history lovers alike. Whether you are a seasoned numismatist or someone who simply enjoys the idea of hidden value in everyday objects, the 1969 Lincoln penny is a coin worth knowing about, worth examining closely, and worth appreciating for the subtle ways in which history, craftsmanship, and chance come together in a single piece of currency. Keep an eye out, look closely at your pennies, and you may just find that the next valuable treasure is sitting right in the palm of your hand. Picture holding a single penny in your hand. Ordinary, plain, worth just 1 cent. Now imagine that same penny could be worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars, not because someone said so, but because that little piece of metal carries a secret, a twist of fate from the minting process that made it rare, unusual, or a genuine error. This is the strange and compelling story of the Liberty 1 cent 1974 Lincoln penny, one of the most intriguing coins in modern American numismatics, a coin that most people overlook every day, yet which holds some of the deepest mysteries, rarest anomalies, and most exciting values in the world of coin collecting. The 1974 Lincoln penny was struck during a period of change, experimentation, and economic pressure in the United States. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, had by this time been in continuous production for more than 6 decades. It was common, familiar, and so ingrained in everyday commerce that few people gave it a second thought. In 1974 alone, billions of these pennies were produced and released into general circulation. Millions of Americans spent them, saved them in jars, and carried them in wallets just like pennies from any other year. Because so many were made, most 1974 Lincoln cents continued to circulate as pocket change worth exactly their face value for decades after they were minted. Most of the copper pennies from this year look the same. The obverse front bears the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, the motto "In God We Trust" above his head, the word liberty to his left, and the date 1974 just below. On the reverse back, the Lincoln Memorial stands as a symbol of freedom and unity. Unless you know what to look for, a 1974 penny might seem completely ordinary. Its base metals, copper with small amounts of zinc and tin, were chosen after years of experimentation to produce a durable coin for everyday use at the lowest possible cost, a negotiation between the mint and changing metal markets. But what makes 1974 pennies fascinating to collectors is precisely the exceptions to the ordinary. While the overwhelming majority of these coins are common and worth only their 1-cent face value in everyday circulation, a handful of 1974 Lincoln cents have surfaced that defy that norm. They command prices far greater than face value because they are unusual, sometimes due to mint errors, sometimes due to mistakes in production, and occasionally due to rare varieties and anomalies that occurred during the minting process. To understand how a 1-cent piece can become valuable, it helps to look at the context of the time. In the early 1970s, the price of copper was rising globally, and producing coins containing significant amounts of the metal was becoming increasingly expensive. The United States Mint, which must operate efficiently and with an eye toward cost, began exploring alternatives to the traditional copper composition for the Lincoln cent. In 1973 and continuing into early 1974, the Mint conducted experimental test strikes using aluminum planchets instead of copper ones. These aluminum cent experiments were designed to find a lighter, less costly metal for future production. These test coins were not part of the regular public release and were not intended for circulation. After the experiments were completed, the vast majority of aluminum 1974 cents were ordered destroyed by the Treasury Department. Congress ultimately decided that the public would not be ready for such a dramatic change and that aluminum did not meet necessary criteria for long-term practical use. Nevertheless, a very small number of these aluminum 1974 Lincoln cents survived, usually those that were taken by Mint employees, those that escaped destruction, or those that ended up in collections before orders for destruction were fully enforced. Now, these aluminum examples are among the rarest and most valuable American coins from the modern era. Because only a handful exist, and because their survival was almost accidental, collectors pay extraordinary sums for verified aluminum 1974 pennies. Some have sold privately or at auction for figures that dwarf the value of even classic rarities from earlier centuries. Beyond the aluminum experiments, the 1974 Lincoln cent also produced more typical mint errors and varieties that have captured the attention of collectors. Mint errors occur when something goes wrong in the process of creating a coin, whether it's the die that strikes the coin being flawed, the planchet blank coin being distorted, or the striking process itself being imperfect. Each category of error can produce a collector-worthy coin when the mistake is unusual, dramatic, or scarce. One of the more sought-after varieties among 1974 Lincoln pennies is the double die obverse. This type of error happens during the die creation process. The die, a piece of hardened steel with the inverse image of the coin's design, is created by pressing a master hub into it. If the hub and die do not align perfectly during this process, the die may receive two slightly offset impressions of the same design. When such a die is used to strike coins, the resulting coins show duplicated design elements, letters, numbers, and details appear to have a secondary outline or shadow. On a 1974 penny, a double die can be most noticeable in the words "In God We Trust," "Liberty," or the date. For collectors, a strong double die can transform a coin worth a few cents into one worth many hundreds of dollars, depending on how bold and visible the doubling is, and in what condition the coin survives. Errors related to the mint mark are also notable. In 1974, Lincoln cents were struck at multiple facilities: Philadelphia No Mint Mark, Denver D Mint Mark, and San Francisco S Mint Mark. The mint mark, a small letter indicating where the coin was produced, appears on the obverse near the date. In some rare cases, coins were struck with over mint marks, for example, a D mint mark punched over a previously punched S, or vice versa. These anomalies occur when a die that was originally intended for one mint was repurposed at another, and the mint mark was not fully removed before being repunched. The result can be a faint shadow of the underlying mint mark visible beneath the new one. Such varieties are rare and can add generous premiums to a coin's value when confirmed by a knowledgeable dealer or grading service. Another category of error can occur when the blank planchet is not correctly aligned between the obverse and reverse dies, resulting in off-center strikes. When a planchet is not fed correctly into the press, the dies may not hit it squarely, producing a coin where part of the design is missing or shifted. Off-center errors can be mild, a tiny portion of the rim missing, or extreme, where a large part of the design is absent. Collectors prize these errors, especially when the off-center strike is dramatic enough to produce an unusual aesthetic. Depending on how far off-center the strike is and how pleasing or dramatic the error appears, off-center 1974 pennies can sell for amounts far above their face value. There are also die cracks, cuds, and lamination errors that appear from time to time. Die cracks happen when the die develops a fissure due to stress. Coins struck with cracked dies show raised lines where the metal filled the crack. A cud error occurs when a piece of the die breaks off entirely, leaving a missing portion of the design on subsequent coins. Lamination errors occur when the metal of the planchet itself peels or splits due to impurities or internal strain. Coins with these errors can vary widely in value depending on how visually striking and how scarce the error is. Another dimension to the value of 1974 pennies comes from condition. Every coin has a grade, a standardized measure of how worn or pristine it is. Coins that have merely circulated in pocket change for decades will show smoothing of details, loss of original luster, and surface marks. These circulated coins have very little collector value beyond their face value and the metal they contain. However, coins that were saved shortly after minting and have remained untouched, retaining their original mint luster and sharp details, are described as being in uncirculated condition. Within uncirculated condition, there are further gradations. Coins with strong strike detail and attractive color can command premiums among collectors. A high-grade uncirculated 1974 cent without errors, while still common in the grand scheme, can be worth a few dollars as a collectible, especially if it shows full original red copper luster. When condition and error types align in a rare combination, the values can become striking. Imagine a 1974 penny that not only shows a strong double die but is also in pristine uncirculated condition. This coin is not just rare because of its error but also because it has survived decades without wear. Collectors competing for such a coin can push its value well beyond what a typical 1-cent piece would ever fetch. Another important point in understanding values is the role of third-party grading services. Organizations like Professional Coin Grading Service (PCGS) and Numismatic Guarantee Company (NGC) examine coins submitted by collectors and attribute an official grade and authentication. These services certify whether an error is genuine, how strong the error is, and what condition the coin is in. Coins that have been authenticated and graded by a reputable service often command higher values because buyers have confidence in the accuracy of the description. It's one thing to say a particular penny might be worth more than its face value because it has an error, it's another thing to understand how much more. For ordinary 1974 pennies in circulated condition with no errors or varieties, collectors typically assign value close to face value. These coins are so plentiful and so widely distributed that finding one in a pocket change roll is not unusual. However, even coins that show attractive red color and uncirculated detail can attract a small premium. A 1974 Lincoln cent in high uncirculated grade may be worth a few dollars or more depending on eye appeal, strike quality, and marketplace demand. When a coin bears a noticeable error, values can climb significantly. A well-documented double die example can be worth several $100s or more. An off-center strike with a dramatic misalignment might sell for anywhere from a few dozen to a few $100s, depending on severity. Over mint mark varieties and other rare strikes can produce values that modestly exceed common examples. And at the very rarest end, the aluminum 1974 cents that were not meant to exist, values can reach into the tens of thousands or beyond because so few are known and because their existence is a direct link to a unique chapter in U.S. mint history. It's important to note that values in coin collecting are dynamic. They fluctuate based on collector demand, rarity, condition, and market trends. The most reliable indicator of what a coin is truly worth is what someone is willing to pay for it in a real transaction, whether through a reputable auction house, a major dealer, or a certified sale. Over time, documented sales of rare 1974 penny varieties have shown that collectors are willing to pay strong premiums for coins with verified errors, especially those that are graded and authenticated. The allure of the 1974 Lincoln penny is not just financial. It's a story about everyday objects revealing hidden complexity. It's about how something that seems commonplace can, under the right circumstances, become remarkable. Each error tells a story about how coins are made, about machinery, human oversight, and the exacting standards of mint production. Each rare variety offers a connection to moments when something went slightly askew in a process that usually produces uniform results. For the novice collector, discovering a penny that looks unusual can spark curiosity. Is that doubling real? Why does this mint mark appear odd? What is the story behind this misalignment? Clues like unusual lettering, mismatched details, or unexpected weights invite investigation, discussion, and sometimes even authentication. Even seasoned collectors find joy in the unexpected. The 1974 Lincoln penny, ordinary though it may seem to most, represents a microcosm of why many people are drawn to numismatics in the first place. Coins are history you can hold. They are everyday artifacts that connect us to places, times, decisions, and sometimes mistakes that tell deeper stories about industry, culture, and economics. While most 1974 pennies will remain common and affordable, the ones with unusual characteristics remind us that value is not just face value. It's a combination of scarcity, condition, historical context, and human fascination with the stories behind objects. A coin that most people overlook can become an object of intrigue and worth because it reveals something unexpected: a fleeting moment of error captured in metal, a chance survival from an experiment never intended for public hands, a subtle variation that separates a handful from billions. Collectors of all levels cherish those rare encounters, finding a coin that defies the ordinary and invites you to wonder about how it came to be. The next time you hold a 1974 Lincoln penny, remember that it could be an ordinary piece of everyday currency, or it could be something far more interesting. It might be the door to a deeper story, a small metal thread that opens a rich tapestry of history, production, rarity, and value. The Liberty 1-cent Lincoln penny of 1974 may be small in size, but the stories it holds, from ordinary circulation to rare anomalies, prove that even the humblest coins can become precious when viewed through the eyes of history, curiosity, and discovery. My dears, if finding an ordinary 1-cent coin in your pocket change, a coin that most people would ignore without a second thought, yet hidden in that tiny piece of copper, could be a story of American history, minting technology, and sometimes even a small fortune. Among the billions of coins struck by the United States Mint, some carry subtle mistakes or unusual details that transform a simple coin into a collectible treasure. One such coin that fascinates collectors is the 1981 D Lincoln penny, a coin bearing the image of Abraham Lincoln and the word liberty on its obverse. Although its official face value is just 1 cent, certain examples of this coin have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on their condition and the presence of rare minting errors. This is the story of the 1981 D Lincoln cent, its place in American coinage history, the errors and varieties that make it valuable, and the reasons collectors still search through everyday pocket change hoping to find one. The Lincoln penny is one of the longest-running coin designs in the United States. The design first appeared in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the birth of President Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regular United States coin to feature a real historical figure. The coin's portrait of Lincoln was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials appear on many versions of the coin. Over time, the Lincoln cent became an iconic piece of American currency, passing through countless hands and witnessing generations of economic and social change. In 1959, the reverse design changed to the Lincoln Memorial, which remained until 2008. The 1981 D penny belongs to this Lincoln Memorial series, a period when billions of coins were produced to meet the everyday needs of commerce. In 1981, the Denver facility of the United States Mint produced an enormous number of pennies to keep up with circulation demand. More than 5.37 billion 1981 D cents were struck at the Mint in Denver. At first glance, this huge production number would seem to guarantee that the coin is extremely common and worth no more than its face value. Indeed, most 1981 D pennies found in everyday circulation are worth only 1 cent or perhaps slightly more if they remain in excellent condition. However, coin collecting is not simply about how many coins were produced. What truly determines a coin's value is its rarity in a particular form, its condition, and the presence of unusual characteristics caused by mistakes during the minting process. These mistakes are known as mint errors, and they are the reason some ordinary coins suddenly become highly desirable collectibles. A typical 1981 D Lincoln penny is composed primarily of copper, about 95% copper, with the remaining portion consisting of zinc and tin. This composition had been used for decades before the United States Mint switched to a zinc-based composition in 1982. Because 1981 was among the last years of the traditional copper alloy pennies, many collectors appreciate these coins as part of the final generation of heavier copper cents. The coin weighs approximately 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. On the front, or obverse, the coin displays Lincoln's portrait facing right with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the year 1981. Below the date appears the small letter D, indicating the coin was minted in Denver. The reverse side shows the Lincoln Memorial Building with the words, "United States of America, 1 cent," and the motto, "E Pluribus Unum." Although billions of these coins were minted, only a small fraction remain in pristine condition today. Most coins entered circulation immediately after leaving the mint, where they were exposed to wear, scratches, and discoloration. The condition of a coin is described using a grading scale that ranges from heavily worn to perfect mint state. Coins that survive with their original red copper color and sharp details can command higher prices among collectors. A typical 1981 penny in average circulated condition might sell for about 25 cents or slightly more, reflecting a modest premium above its face value simply because collectors enjoy keeping examples from each year. In higher mint state grades the value increases further, with coins graded around MS65 sometimes selling for about $12 or more. Extremely rare examples in near-perfect condition have even reached auction prices above $5,000 when graded at the highest levels. However, condition alone is not the primary reason a 1981 penny might become truly valuable. The most exciting aspect of coin collecting is the search for mint errors. During the minting process, millions of blank metal discs called planchets are fed into presses where dies strike them with immense force to create the coin's design. Despite strict quality control, small mistakes can occur during this process. These mistakes may produce coins with unusual features that were never intended by the mint. Because such errors are rare and often visually striking, collectors eagerly seek them out. One of the most famous types of coin error is the doubled die. A doubled die occurs during the creation of the coin's die itself. When the die is being formed, the design from a master hub may be impressed more than once in slightly different positions. If the hub shifts slightly between impressions, the final die will contain overlapping images. Every coin struck from that die will show doubling in the affected areas. On a 1981 penny, this doubling might appear in the date, the letters of the word Liberty, or other inscriptions on the coin's surface. When the doubling is clear enough to be seen with the naked eye or with minimal magnification, collectors consider it a valuable variety. Some double die 1981 pennies have sold for $50 to $150 depending on how strong the doubling appears and how well preserved the coin is. Another intriguing error involves the mint mark itself. Before the early 1990s, mint marks were not part of the original die design. Instead, they were punched manually into the die by workers at the mint. Because this process relied on human precision, it sometimes resulted in mint marks being punched more than once in slightly different positions. When this happened, the coin displayed a repunched mint mark, often abbreviated by collectors as RPM. On a 1981 penny, this might appear as two slightly overlapping D letters beneath the date. Depending on how dramatic the doubling appears, a repunched mint mark coin can be worth anywhere from $200 to $400 in collector markets. Some of the most visually dramatic errors occur when the coin is struck off-center. During normal production, the blank planchet is held firmly between the dies so that the design is centered perfectly on the coin. If the planchet is not positioned correctly when the dies strike, part of the design may be missing while another section appears shifted toward the edge. The resulting coin may display a crescent-shaped blank area where no design was struck. The value of an off-center 1981 penny depends on how much of the design is missing and whether the date remains visible. If the coin is only slightly off-center, it may be worth just a few dollars. However, dramatic examples with large portions missing and a visible date can sell for hundreds of dollars, sometimes approaching $900 or more. Closely related to off-center strikes are broad strike errors. A broad strike occurs when the collar that normally surrounds the coin during striking fails to hold the planchet in place. Without the collar, the metal spreads outward when struck, creating a coin that appears wider and flatter than usual. The design remains visible but may appear stretched toward the edges. Broad strike errors are less dramatic than off-center strikes but still attract collectors. On a 1981 penny, such an error may bring $20 to $150 depending on condition and appearance. Another category of errors results from damage to the die itself. During prolonged use, the steel dies that strike coins may develop cracks due to the immense pressure involved in minting. When a cracked die strikes a coin, metal flows into the crack and produces a raised line on the coin's surface. These die crack errors vary widely in appearance. Some appear as thin lines across the design, while others form large breaks known as cuds where a chunk of the die actually breaks away. Minor cracks may add only a few dollars of value, but large dramatic breaks can attract significant interest among collectors. Some examples of 1981 pennies with substantial die breaks have sold for hundreds of dollars, illustrating how even imperfections can become desirable features in the world of numismatics. Among the most curious varieties seen on Lincoln pennies is the so-called BIE error. This occurs when a small die chip forms between the letters B and E in the word Liberty. The chip produces a tiny raised mark that resembles the letter I, making the inscription appear to read Liberty. Although these errors are fairly common and usually visible only under magnification, they still fascinate collectors who enjoy searching through coins for unusual details. A 1981 D penny with a BIE error may sell for a few dollars to perhaps $8 depending on its condition. Occasionally, even more dramatic mistakes occur when a coin is struck on the wrong type of metal blank. In normal production, each denomination of coin has its own planchet size and composition. However, in rare circumstances a blank intended for another denomination may enter the penny press by mistake. When this happens, the resulting coin may appear smaller or made from a different metal than expected. For example, a penny struck on a dime planchet would appear undersized and weigh less than normal. Such wrong planchet errors are extremely rare but highly prized by collectors. Some examples from the early 1980s have been valued at $500 to $2,000 depending on the exact circumstances and condition. Another unusual error type is the fold-over strike. In this situation, the metal blank partially folds over itself during the striking process due to a mechanical malfunction. The design is then impressed on both the folded and unfolded portions of the coin, producing a dramatic appearance where part of the coin overlaps itself. Although these errors are rare, they have occurred in modern Lincoln cents. A fold-over strike from the early 1980s reportedly sold for more than $1,000 in high-grade condition, demonstrating how collectors are willing to pay significant amounts for visually unique minting mistakes. Even though the 1981 D penny can sometimes be valuable, most examples remain common and inexpensive. With billions produced, the vast majority of coins show normal designs without major errors. These coins circulate widely in everyday transactions, often spending decades passing through vending machines, cash registers, and coin jars. Over time they develop the dull brown color typical of circulated copper coins. Yet the possibility that a rare error could still be hiding among ordinary change keeps collectors searching. Many enthusiasts examine every penny they encounter, hoping to discover that one unusual coin worth far more than its tiny denomination. The culture of coin collecting plays a significant role in the value of these coins. Numismatics, the study and collection of coins and currency, has a long tradition around the world. Collectors often build sets based on years, mint marks, or specific varieties. In the case of Lincoln cents, some collectors attempt to assemble complete collections covering every year and mint location from 1909 to the present. Others focus specifically on error coins or unusual varieties. For these collectors, the thrill lies not only in the monetary value of the coins but also in the challenge of discovering rare pieces that others might overlook. The story of the 1981 D penny is also tied to a larger moment in United States monetary history. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the rising price of copper made it increasingly expensive to produce pennies using the traditional alloy. By 1982, the United States Mint introduced a new composition consisting mainly of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change significantly reduced production costs but also marked the end of an era for the classic copper cent. As one of the final copper alloy issues before the transition, the 1981 penny holds a small but meaningful place in that historical shift. For collectors and historians alike, coins like the 1981 D Lincoln cent serve as miniature time capsules. Each coin represents a moment in the economic life of the nation. The designs reflect national symbols and values, while the metal composition reveals the practical realities of industrial production. Mint errors, once considered embarrassing mistakes, now provide valuable insights into the complex machinery and processes behind coin manufacturing. When collectors study these coins under magnification, they are not merely searching for profit. They are also uncovering stories about how money is made and how even small imperfections can become treasured artifacts. Today, the market for Lincoln cents continues to evolve as collectors discover new varieties and as grading standards become more precise. Professional grading services evaluate coins carefully, assigning them numerical grades and certifying their authenticity. Coins that receive high grades from these organizations often sell for significantly higher prices because buyers trust the accuracy of the evaluation. As a result, a well-preserved 1981 D penny in top condition may attract considerable attention at auctions and coin shows. The internet has also transformed the way collectors search for rare coins. Online marketplaces and auction sites allow collectors around the world to buy and sell coins instantly. A collector in one country might discover a rare error coin listed by someone who found it in a jar of spare change. This global connectivity increases both competition and awareness in the coin market. When a particularly unusual 1981 penny appears online, collectors quickly analyze photographs, compare details, and sometimes engage in bidding wars to secure the coin. Despite these technological changes, the fundamental appeal of coin collecting remains simple. The excitement comes from the possibility that a small overlooked object might hold unexpected value. Every penny in circulation carries the potential to reveal a hidden story, whether it is a subtle double die, a repunched mint mark, or an off-center strike that slipped past mint inspectors decades ago. For collectors, searching through coins becomes a kind of treasure hunt, one that connects them to history and to the fascinating imperfections of the minting process. Even if a collector never finds a valuable error coin, the experience of examining coins can still be rewarding. The details on the Lincoln cent design reveal remarkable artistry when viewed closely. Lincoln's portrait shows fine lines in his hair and subtle contours in his face. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse even contains a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the building, visible under magnification. These details remind collectors that coins are not merely pieces of metal but carefully crafted works of art produced in vast quantities. The 1981 Lincoln penny also highlights an interesting paradox within numismatics. Coins are created to be identical, yet collectors value the ones that are different. The more unusual the difference, the more valuable the coin can become. In this way, mistakes transform into treasures. A slight misalignment of a die or an accidental second punch of a mint mark can create a coin that stands apart from millions of ordinary examples. Over time, these small differences gain historical significance as collectors document and catalog each variety. As years pass, the number of surviving high-quality examples of the 1981 penny may gradually decrease. Coins are lost, damaged, or melted down, and only a fraction remain in collectible condition. This natural attrition can increase the desirability of the best-preserved coins. At the same time, the continuing popularity of Lincoln cents ensures that collectors will keep studying them, searching for previously unknown varieties or overlooked errors. In the end, the humble 1981 Lincoln penny represents much more than a 1-cent piece of currency. It is part of a long tradition of American coinage, a product of the United States Mint's massive production efforts, and a reminder that even ordinary objects can become extraordinary through the quirks of manufacturing. Most examples will always remain worth only a penny, but a small number with rare errors or exceptional preservation have proven that their value can rise far beyond their original purpose. For anyone curious about coins, the message is simple. Look closely at the small details in everyday objects. The next time you receive change, take a moment to examine the pennies. Check the date, the mint mark, and the inscriptions. You might notice something unusual: a doubled letter, an off-center design, or a strange mark near the word Liberty. In that moment you will be participating in the same search that has fascinated collectors for generations. And who knows, perhaps the coin in your hand will turn out to be one of those rare 1981 pennies whose journey from the mint to circulation eventually transformed it into a tiny but valuable piece of history. If picking up a single 1-cent coin from your pocket change, the same small copper-colored coin that millions of people ignore every day. You glance at it and see the familiar face of Abraham Lincoln, the word Liberty beside him, and the year 1982 with a small letter D under the date. Most people would think this coin is worth exactly 1 cent and nothing more. But what if that tiny coin could actually be worth hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of dollars? What if a simple penny sitting quietly in a jar or hiding among loose change carried a rare mistake that collectors around the world are desperately searching for? The 1982 Lincoln penny is one of the most fascinating coins in modern American coin collecting because its story involves a dramatic change in metal composition, rare mint errors, mysterious varieties, and a handful of coins so rare that they have sold for astonishing prices. This ordinary-looking coin has become a legend among collectors, proving that sometimes the smallest pieces of money hold the most extraordinary stories. The Lincoln penny is one of the longest-running and most recognized coins in the history of the United States. The design first appeared in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first circulating American coin to feature the portrait of a real historical figure. Sculptor Victor David Brenner designed the coin, placing Lincoln's profile on the obverse along with the motto "In God We Trust" and the word Liberty. On early versions the reverse displayed 2 wheat stalks, a design known as the wheat penny. In 1959, the reverse design was replaced with the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C., creating the Lincoln Memorial Cent that circulated for nearly 50 years. By the early 1980s, the Lincoln Memorial penny had already become one of the most widely produced coins in American history. Billions of them were minted every year to supply everyday commerce. These coins passed through countless hands in stores, banks, vending machines, and piggy banks across the country. Most people paid little attention to them, yet collectors carefully examined them because small differences in date, mint mark, or design could make certain coins rare. The year 1982 became one of the most important and unusual years for the Lincoln cent. During that year, the United States Mint faced a serious economic problem. The price of copper had risen so much that the metal used to produce a penny was costing more than the coin's face value. Producing pennies with the traditional copper alloy was becoming financially impractical. To solve this issue, the mint made a historic decision. Beginning in 1982, the composition of the penny would change from the traditional copper alloy to a new copper-plated zinc core. The new coins contained about 97.5% zinc with a thin outer layer of copper. This change dramatically reduced production costs but also created one of the most complex years in the history of American coinage. Because the change happened during the same year, the mint produced pennies made from two different metals. Earlier coins were the traditional bronze alloy containing 95% copper and weighing about 3.11 grams. Later coins were made from copper-plated zinc and weighed only about 2.5 grams. The difference in weight became one of the easiest ways for collectors to distinguish the two types. At the same time, another variation appeared in the design of the date itself. Some pennies displayed what collectors call a large date while others had a small date. These differences may look subtle to casual observers, but collectors recognize them easily. The large date version has thicker, wider numbers while the small date version has thinner numerals and a slightly different shape, particularly in the number 2. When the metal composition and date style are combined with different mint locations, the result is an unusually complicated group of coins. The year 1982 produced 7 regular varieties plus a rare transitional error variety, making it one of the most studied years in modern American coin collecting. The Denver Mint played a major role in this story. Coins with the letter D beneath the date were produced in Denver, Colorado, one of the main facilities of the United States Mint. Billions of pennies were struck there during 1982 to meet the demands of everyday commerce. Most of these coins entered circulation immediately and were used in everyday transactions across the country. For most people, a 1982 D penny is still worth exactly 1 cent. Common examples that show normal wear from circulation may sell for only a few cents to collectors, mainly because they want examples from every year. Even uncirculated coins without errors usually sell for only a few dollars depending on their condition. However, certain 1982 D pennies are dramatically different. Some of them contain unusual combinations of date style and metal composition. Others display minting mistakes such as doubled letters, repunched mint marks, or off-center designs. A very small number contain a famous transitional error that collectors consider one of the most exciting discoveries in modern numismatics. The most famous variety is the 1982 D small date copper penny. According to the official production plans, all small date coins from the Denver Mint were supposed to be struck on the new zinc planchets. Yet a tiny number of coins were accidentally struck on leftover copper planchets from earlier production runs. These coins should never have existed. Their creation was the result of a transitional moment when the mint was switching from copper to zinc. Only a handful of these coins have been discovered, making them extremely rare. Some experts believe that only 2 confirmed examples exist, while others estimate that a few more may still be waiting to be discovered in collections or circulation. Because of their rarity, these coins have achieved legendary status among collectors. One example sold for more than $18,000 at auction, and other estimates suggest that high-grade specimens could be worth far more depending on condition and demand. Some reports even claim that similar small-date copper varieties from 1982 have reached values approaching hundreds of thousands of dollars when certified and sold to serious collectors. The reason for such extraordinary prices lies in the concept of a transitional error. A transitional error occurs when a coin is struck using materials or designs intended for a different production period. These mistakes often occur during times when the mint is changing its manufacturing processes. Because they represent rare moments of transition in the history of coinage, collectors consider them extremely desirable. The 1982 D small date copper penny perfectly illustrates this concept. The coin combines a design that was intended for zinc planchets with a metal composition that belonged to an earlier production method. The result is a coin that represents the exact moment when one era of penny production ended and another began. Beyond the famous transitional error, many other types of mistakes can appear on 1982D pennies. These mint errors occur during different stages of the coin manufacturing process. One common type of error is known as a double die. This occurs when the die used to strike coins receives multiple impressions from the master hub in slightly different positions. When coins are struck with such a die, the letters or numbers appear doubled. On a 1982D penny, the doubling might appear in the word Liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," or the date itself. Strong examples of double die coins can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on their visibility and condition. Another interesting variety involves repunched mint marks. During the early 1980s, mint marks were still punched into coin dies manually rather than being included in the original design. If the punch was applied more than once in slightly different positions, the result was a doubled or repunched mint mark. On the 1982D penny, this appears as overlapping impressions of the letter D beneath the date. Some of these coins have been valued at up to $200 when the doubling is clearly visible. Off-center strike errors are another type of collectible mistake. These occur when the coin blank is not perfectly centered in the press during striking. As a result, part of the design appears shifted toward the edge of the coin while another portion remains blank. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin can become. Some examples may sell for dozens or even hundreds of dollars depending on the percentage of the design that is missing. Broad strike errors occur when the collar that normally surrounds the coin during striking fails to hold the metal in place. Without the collar, the metal spreads outward when struck, producing a coin that appears wider than normal with flattened edges. Die cracks and die breaks are another category of collectible errors. Over time, the steel dies used to strike coins can develop small cracks due to the enormous pressure of the minting process. When coins are struck with cracked dies, metal flows into the cracks and forms raised lines on the coin's surface. These lines can sometimes appear dramatic and unusual, attracting the attention of collectors. Plating errors are particularly interesting on zinc pennies. Because the zinc core is coated with a thin layer of copper, problems in the plating process can produce unusual appearances. Some coins may have areas where the copper coating is missing or uneven, exposing the gray zinc beneath. These coins can look partially silver instead of copper-colored, making them easy to notice. Another rare type of error occurs when a coin is struck on the wrong type of planchet. For example, a penny might accidentally be struck on a blank intended for another denomination. These off-metal errors are extremely rare but highly valued by collectors when authenticated. Even when a coin has no errors, its condition can greatly influence its value. Coin collectors use a grading system to evaluate the state of preservation. Circulated coins show signs of wear from handling, while uncirculated coins retain their original mint luster. High-grade coins with bright red copper color are especially desirable. Freshly minted copper coins have a bright reddish appearance that gradually darkens over time. Coins that retain their original red color are often more valuable because they have been preserved carefully. In the case of the 1982D penny, certain high-grade examples have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars when graded at the highest levels by professional grading services. The fascination with the 1982D penny continues because billions of these coins were produced and many are still circulating today. Unlike older rare coins that are already locked away in collections, some valuable 1982D varieties might still be hiding in everyday change. Collectors often search through rolls of pennies obtained from banks in hopes of finding rare varieties. This activity, known as coin roll hunting, has become a popular hobby. Enthusiasts carefully examine each coin under magnification, checking the date, style, mint mark, weight, and any signs of errors. The process of identifying valuable 1982D pennies often begins with weighing the coin. A weight of about 3.11 grams indicates the traditional copper composition, while a weight of about 2.5 grams indicates the zinc variety. Once the metal type is known, collectors examine the date to determine whether it is a large date or small date. The possibility of discovering a rare transitional error keeps collectors motivated. The idea that a coin worth thousands of dollars could be sitting unnoticed in a jar of loose change captures the imagination of collectors around the world. The story of the 1982D Lincoln penny also highlights the broader appeal of coin collecting. Coins are not only pieces of money but also historical artifacts. They reflect the economic conditions, technological changes, and artistic styles of the time in which they were produced. The transition from copper to zinc in 1982 represents a significant moment in the history of American currency. Rising metal prices forced the mint to adopt a new production method, demonstrating how economic pressures can shape the design and composition of money. For collectors and historians alike, the 1982 D penny represents a fascinating intersection of history, economics, and chance. Most of these coins remain ordinary pieces of currency worth only 1 cent. Yet a small number contain rare characteristics that transform them into valuable collectibles. The next time someone receives a penny in change, they might glance at the date and mint mark with new curiosity. That small copper-colored coin might simply be another common penny. Or it might be one of the rare varieties that collectors have spent decades searching for. Hidden among billions of ordinary coins, the legendary 1982 D Lincoln penny continues to remind collectors that sometimes the greatest treasures in the world of numismatics are the ones that look the most ordinary.